Electrocast.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. It is Saturday morning, and I'm drinking a hot cup of Bottom Gun coffee from my friends at bottomguncoffee.com. I have a very special episode for you today, and we're going to get right to it. I got a chance to sit down with legendary leadership author Ken Blanchard and Randy Conley to talk about their new book, Simple Truths of Leadership, 52 Ways to be a Servant Leader and Build Trust. Let me tell you, this is an amazing book. I got a chance to read an advanced copy and I was blown away. I've read a bunch of leadership books over the past 30 years, but Ken and Randy really hit it out of the park with this book. I'm honored that they could take the time out of their busy schedules and talk to me about this book on this episode. Now, this book goes on sale on February 1st, but you will be the first to hear about it on this show. I know you're going to love this episode. So this is one you're going to have to share with all the leaders in your life. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Ken Blanchard and Randy Conley. Ken is a legend in the leadership space. He is co-author of more than 65 books, including the iconic The 1 Minute Manager, which combined sales of over 23 million copies. He was inducted into Amazon's Hall of Fame as one of the top 25 best-selling authors of all time. Randy is an Inc. magazine top 100 leadership speaker and contributing author of 3 books. His award-winning blog, Leading with Trust, has influenced over 4 million viewers since its inception. So I am honored to have both of them on the show to talk about their new book, which is called Simple Truths of Leadership. So Ken and Randy, welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be with you.
Thank you, John. It's a real pleasure.
Well, it's great having you on the show, and congratulations on this new book. I love it. I've been through it, and I'm excited to talk to you guys both about it today. So first of all, my question to you is, why did this book need to be written? And I imagine part of it is in the subtitle, Making Common Sense Common Practice. Why did this book have to be written?
Well, you really nailed it, Ron, because one of my experiences over the years is that good leadership theory is common sense organized. And I really wonder why people, they might go through training, but they don't ever use it, you know. And initially I started writing a book entitled Duh, Why Isn't Common Sense Common Practice? And I've become a big fan of servant leadership. And then talking with Randy, servant leadership and trust go hand in hand. And so, Randy, let's do this thing together. And our publisher said that duh doesn't translate in foreign countries. So that's why it's the simple truths of leadership. 52 ways to become a servant leader and build trust.
Although we still lovingly refer to it as the duh book, when we're talking among ourselves, because that really captures the spirit of, hey, folks, these are common sense leadership principles, but they're not common practice, but right. We're trying to help you and show you how.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's, and you mentioned it in the introduction. I think this is a big point in a lot of my books and the things I talk about is that we still have 65 to 70% of our employees are disengaged at work, or they're not actively engaged in work. And yet we've had 15,000 books written on leadership, right, to date. And our level of knowledge has never been higher. But our level of practice remains so low. So why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Well, I think the big thing is the human ego, because I think that what people do is they get caught up with acting like they know everything and they're the most important thing, and they want everybody sucking up the hierarchy. But what we found, and we've talked about this, Randy and I, that you remember the guy that wrote years ago, "I'm okay, you're okay." He said the worst life position is "I'm okay, you're not." And he said, but his studies show that people with that life position are really covering up not okay feelings about themselves. And I think the biggest problem in leadership is for people to feel comfortable with themselves, because humility is a real key function. We talk about that in the book, and that great quote, I don't know whether it was C.S. Lewis or Rick Warren or myself or who it was, but that said people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think about themselves less. And that's the key, don't you think, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. And building on what Ken said there, John, is leadership is a complex field, right? But it doesn't have to be complicated. And there's a key difference there between something that is complex, which means there's a lot of parts and pieces to it, but complicated is we make the complex too difficult to manage and utilize, and I think that the field of leadership has really become complicated. Like you said, 15,000 titles published a year, on leadership. That's insane, right?
Yeah.
But yet, when you boil down all those things and all the books, and Ken has been the guru at this over his lifetime, it keeps coming back to simple truths, right? It's the key simple truths that if we can remember those and practice them, that's where we get the big bang for our buck.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I like the way this book is written, because I think you boil it down to 52 simple truths, and then you talk about how to apply them. And it's simple, it's straightforward, and it flows really well for new leaders and experienced leaders. Everyone's going to get something out of this book. At least that's my, me going through it. It's a very good book, and I like the way it's written. Talk to me about this. It's written in two different parts, right? So you have two major elements that are in this book that are, half the book is written one way, half the book is written another way. Tell me about those two parts and why those are so important and essential to leadership.
Well, we felt that we needed to build on our strengths, and my excitement is around servant leadership, and Randy's is around trust. And so that's why we divided the book up, because great servant leaders build trust, and people who build trust have a servant heart. Isn't that right, Randy?
Yeah.
They go together.
They simply go together. One of our friends, Charles Green, who's the author of the Trusted Advisor book and a guru in the field of trust, when we asked him to review our book, he said, Ken Blanchard and Randy Conley, baseball and Cracker Jacks, peanut butter and jelly, servant leadership and trust, they just go together,
Yeah.
And they're two symbiotic concepts that are just part of this virtuous circle, that people who have a service approach to leadership want to be there to serve the needs of the people under their charge. They build trust by the very fact of the types of behaviors and the attitudes, the mindset, and the skill set that they have. So the insider secret, John, is that actually there are some truths that ended up in the servant leaders section that were originally in trust, and some that were in trust that ended up in servant leader. And that shows how connected they are.
Yeah.
So even though Ken took the lead on servant leadership and I took the lead on trust, we really collaborated through the whole book to come up with all 52 simple truths.
Yeah,
and
no, I think
52 is really designed that way, so you can read one a week with your people. Or it's in, I think, 5 sections. You could take a section and read it, but it's one that you said, if you give it to your people, what easy conversations you can have versus some 350-page heavy-duty book. You might say, hey, let's take a look at why catching people doing things right is really important. Let's talk about that this week and how we can do that. And And then Randy will say, well, who begins trust, the leader or the followers, And oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And I think, Ken, you're a master of this, but I think making a book that's 170 pages or so is more likely it's going to get read and applied than if it is 300 pages. And I know, throughout your history, you've written a lot of books like that are easily read and easily applied. And I think that's the secret to this book is it's quick to go through. It doesn't take a long time to go through it. And there's so much power. And as an author myself, it's hard to do that, to summarize really important thoughts into a small package like this where it can be, read quickly and applied quickly. And I think that's really one of the things I like about this book is that it's not something that you have to, plan on, okay, I got to spend the whole weekend reading this book. You can do it in, like you said, one a week or in sections. And I think that's an important part of this book as well.
And each truth is in 2 pages facing each other, versus a simple truth on the left hand. And the right hand starts off with, take catching people doing things right. Well, when I ask people, how they know whether they're doing a good job, the response I normally get is nobody's yelled at me lately. No news is good news, And then we say, now how do you take this simple truth? And as you said, everyone ends with, how do you make common sense common practice?
Yeah, like
your point, John, really speaks to what we discussed earlier about us having a tendency to overcomplicate things, right? As an author, and anyone who has done any kind of writing, whether it's a term paper for school or, a memo or anything, the hardest thing to do as a writer is to take stuff out, to cut stuff out, right? Yeah. It's because it's all so wonderful and valuable, and we want to share all of our thoughts and, the whole enchilada, so to speak. And our publisher challenged us. They said, try to keep your simple truth explanation to 300 words. Oh. And that took some work. As a longtime blog writer, I was a little more comfortable with that because, blogs tend to be shorter and punchy and to the point. And of course, Ken is written in parables and simple truths forever. So it took us a little bit, but we really hit our stride. And that goes to the point of, hey, folks, let's not overcomplicate this. There are some really simple truths about leadership. Keep it short, keep it simple, focus on that, and you'll be successful.
I love it. So I wanted to dive into a couple of the simple truths just to talk about them because I think they're really they're very important and they're very, I think like I said, this book will be helpful for those that are in leadership positions to think through these things. So one of the ones that I like that you've got here, and I've always said you can't take a cookie cutter approach to leadership. You say that a servant leader realizes they have to use different strokes for different folks, and sometimes different strokes for the same folks. So what does that look like when a leader is doing it right?
Well, that's tied into our SL2 model, which is our situational approach to effective leadership, is that when you sit with people, it all starts with clear goals. You don't want to have more than 3 to 5 goals, but in each goal, the person might be at a different development level. In other words, they might have a different amount of competence and commitment or motivation there. And so in some goals, the people will know more than you, and you can delegate to them, and they can call you if they need anything. And others they might be brand new at that goal. They've never worked on finance before and all. And they might need a directive leadership style. And so it's not only using different strokes for different folks, but different strokes for the same folks on different parts of their job. And that's really a powerful thing, because one of the things that Randy and I believe in firmly is with any theory, whether it's SL2, the 1 minute manager, anything, you don't do it to people, you do it with them. And you want to make sure they understand the theory. So when you're analyzing development level and determining which leadership style to use on each goal, the direct report or the person working with you, you're doing it together.
Yeah, I like that. So one of the terms you used in the book was, and I like this, and I wanted to hear more about it, which is autonomy through boundaries. What does that look like?
That's a great one. That comes from Ken's work and our work on empowerment. And he wrote a book years ago with Alan Randolph and John Carlos called Empowerment Takes More Than a Minute. And the concept is that if you think of a river flows in a direction because it's got banks that channels its energy. If you don't have the banks, that river becomes a puddle, right? It's just this body of water. And boundaries really channel people's autonomy. People sort of think boundaries, oh, that means structure, rigid, I can only do a certain thing. Well, no, with structure comes freedom. People have a clear mission of what their purpose is. And when it's time to call an audible or do something different, they clearly know, what's sort of in bounds and out of bounds and how to handle that. So that's part of the philosophy behind that simple truth. What would you add, Kim?
No, I think that kind of nails it, because it really sets up the parameters in which people are working. And I think they really feel comfortable with that, knowing what the boundaries are. And they also get excited when they know you're there to help them, not to, beat them up because, you missed that boundary or you didn't. No, I mean, they're guidelines, not penalty strokes.
Yeah, I think as leaders, we have to establish the goals, the mission, right? And then establish the boundaries, if you will, or the rules, to which we're going to operate in this business. But then you kind of have to get out of the way, right? I mean, part of it is establishing those boundaries so that you can get away and people know where the guardrails are.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings, and I'm sure it's in the book somewhere, is that the important thing about leadership is not what happens when you're there; it's what happens when you're not there. And that's where the real action is. And there's where the boundaries are the guides when you're not there.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
One ping only, please. As I thought, John Rennie's new book, All in the Same Boat, is right over there. It's at allinthesameboatbook.com. Your orders are to get there now. And remember, be careful what you shoot at. Most things in here don't react too well to bullets.
Is your boss a jerk? I understand you're in the hospital, but I'm going to need you to come in today. Do they lack any ability to actually lead people? Oh, it's fine. I'll just find somebody else that can do it, okay? John is offering a new service just for you. For only $10, he will anonymously mail a copy of his best-selling book, I Have the Watch, to your boss with a personal note. Go to ihavethewatch.com and enter the discount code BOSS at checkout.
So in one section, I love this because I'm a big Jim Collins fan. You do bring up Jim Collins' work on Level 5 leaders, and you talk about these leaders who have this powerful mixture of personal humility and professional will. And so you mentioned ego being a problem when we started this off. You also talked about humility being important. Why is this critical for servant leaders to have this mixture of personal humility and professional will?
What do you think about that, Rand? Go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll let you take the lead on it.
Well, it's just they're just so key, and I'm a big fan of his. We've talked many times and all, but that if you have people have the opportunity to go with it and take their will and run with it and all, but there's no boundaries, there's no kinds of things, you're really in trouble. And so what you also want to make sure is that they don't get carried away and start patting themselves on the back too much, and that's where the humility comes in, so that they can go for it and be a leader but they do it in a humble, caring way where people really know this is a we deal, not a me.
Yeah. I would add that simple truth ties in very well with, our simple truth number 25, I think it is, of Rick Warren's quote, right, from his book, The Purpose-Driven Life. It's not about you.
Yes.
Servant leaders realize leadership is not about them. It's about the people that they are serving and caring for. And, in Jim Collins's work, I believe he used the analogy that, level 5 leaders, when the team does well, the level 5 leader is looking out the window and giving credit to the team for all their great success that they do. But when things go bad, the leader is looking in the mirror and reflecting on what did I do or not do that hindered the team from achieving success. So at the heart of a servant leader is caring more about the people you serve than about your own ego, your own needs. And I think that's a core component of level 5 leadership.
Yeah. But a lot of people say, you guys talk about this, but one of your simple truths is about patting yourself on the back.
Yes.
It's okay to toot your own horn.
Because blowing your own horn. And that doesn't mean, you're blowing your own horn at the expense of other people. But if the team is really winning, it's okay to say, God, this has really been fun for us to work on this thing together. And I'm glad I'm part of this team and all. And so to pat yourself on the back is not a bad thing as long as it's not all about you and not about them and a me versus a we.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny, as a servant leader my whole life, and I've led for 30 years, is that when a team does succeed, the leader tends to get a lot of the credit and the accolades. Mm-hmm. And I always had the trouble of saying, it's not me. I didn't do this. I have a great team. They've done it. And here's how I engage the team. But it was always a weird thing for me getting recognized and awards. And, and I'm always like, I didn't do it. I mean, this team did it. They just needed to be engaged, and they needed to have the right person. They had to have the lighter fluid on the fire. And then once it was done, I just got out of the way and they did it, but it was hard for people to understand that because we are in an ego-driven culture, and in big corporations, egos are important. So they want it to be, the leader did it. Well, the leader is the person that gets things going, but really it's the people that drive the results.
That's a good title. That's a good title for a book we could do. Lighter fluid leadership.
There you go. Watch out. Watch out. Here we go. But isn't that the paradox, John, of servant leadership? The very thing that self-serving leaders are seeking, the gratification, the ego strokes, the fame, the fortune, the publicity. It's the servant leader who actually ends up getting those things because they're putting the team first, right? And helping the team succeed. And it's that universal principle of you'll reap what you sow, right? And even though the servant leader is not looking for the gratification, it'll happen just by virtue of the good work that the team does.
Yeah, no, I guarantee it. It's happened my whole career. My wife said, "You've been dragged kicking and screaming up the corporate ladder." That was my career. I just kept doing things and kept given more and more responsibility. But I wasn't out there looking for the next job. I was trying to do my job very well. And in the process, they were asking me to get, doing more and more. And I think that's something that people don't recognize. They think, well, if I'm humble and I have humility, then no one's going to know about me. But that's just the opposite happens. Everyone's going to know about you because of your reputation that you, but what's interesting is that a lot of the other managers that worked beside me couldn't figure out what I was doing. And it wasn't, it was basic.
It was simple truths, right?
But it was just, but they were applied. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the trust thing. And the one thing I really liked is what you said, that fear is an enemy of trust. Mm-hmm. Talk about that, because I see that so much.
Yeah. in order for trust to flourish in a relationship, well, let me back up. For trust to even be necessary, there needs to be some sort of risk involved in a relationship, right? If there's no risk involved, then that's a guarantee. That's a sure thing, right? But if there's any element of risk that, I may be harmed or criticized or ridiculed or taken advantage of, then trust is required. If there's any fear in that relationship, if you have any fear of being harmed, you're not going to extend trust to others. And that ties very closely with the, complex idea of psychological safety, which is essentially, do people feel safe to be vulnerable in an environment, right? And trust needs to be present in order for that safety to be there. So the encouragement to leaders is examine your team, your culture, your organization culture. If there are elements of fear involved, that's going to be working against your efforts to build trust and allow trust to flourish within your environment.
Yeah, I think too how managers deal with failure, like when an employee fails and it's an honest mistake, how are they treated? And I know in my first book I wrote about a manager who I had a major screw up as an engineer in the early part of my career, and he backed me up because he knew I was doing something that had never been done before, and I did fail, and I failed very majestically in front of everyone, and spent a lot of money, but we were doing something that was never been done before. And he backed me up, even though probably it risked his career, but he backed me up knowing I was doing something very difficult that had never been done before. And instead of hurting my career, he helped my career. He gave me a second chance to go in there and get the thing done. And we ended up developing a product that had never been, done before. We were the first to our market, made millions of dollars. But the point is that he had my back. And I think having, like you said, if you eliminate the fear, knowing you've got a boss that has your back, and if you're doing something risky, you build that trust, you build that rapport. And I would do anything for that boss after that moment.
There you go. I was going to ask you.
A wonderful implementation strategy of that is Gary Ridge has built WD-40.
Yeah.
And I read a book with him. And when he started as president, got over about 20 years ago, he said, in the future, there'll be no mistakes in WD-40. There's only learning opportunities. And so he said, what a difference. So he said, one of his people would come in, boy, did we have a learning opportunity, which somebody really screwed up. And he said, okay, tell me about it. What are we going to learn from this? Yeah. Just changing that whole concept from mistakes to learning opportunities. What a difference that is. They have a 92% employee engagement score. Can you imagine? Nobody has those kind of scores.
Oh, no. Yeah, just the opposite. Yeah. Well, let's one of the simple truths that really stood out to me was number 45. It said the opposite of trust is not distrust, it's control. Wow. Why do so many managers get this one wrong? This one's really important.
Yeah, this is one of my personal favorites. And whenever I speak to groups and train groups on building trust, this is always a light bulb, moment for them. I think a good way to illustrate the importance or the dynamic of control and trust is look at how leaders share information or don't share information. Right? How is information typically treated in organizations? Question to you. How's it typically treated?
So I've seen two different ways. One is it's a good manager will share information. It'll be a good two-way dialogue. The ones that are that don't trust their people, they're going to hold that information tight to the vest. So they don't give you access to upper management. They don't give you all the information. They spoon feed you just a little bit at a time because there's fear there, and they're trying to control the message and control the information. Yes.
Bingo. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there, John. Information is often, through low trust leaders, viewed as power, right? It's control. And when you see controlling type behavior in individuals, that should clue you into, oh, that person has some challenges around trust. They're not wanting to extend trust to others. So therefore they're playing all their cards close to the vest. You know, they don't want to be transparent. They don't want to let people in. And so control is actually the opposite of trust, because as we talked about earlier, trust requires vulnerability and an extension of risk, right? You have to put yourself out there in the hopes that, I'm sorry, there's my dog barking in the background there. Hope that
we have dogs on the show all the time. It's
dogs on the show. I'll ask my son, hey, Matthew, could you close the door? Great for a podcast interview, the dog barking, the age of COVID, right?
It is, yes. I have
working from home.
I have 2 golden retrievers that make appearances on the show all the time. So
that's awesome. My apologies. So, when controlling behavior is evident, that should clue people in. That's the opposite of trusting behavior.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah. So you know, at the end of the day, this book, I think you say in the introduction, you probably agree with this, is that the world needs servant leaders who are trusted by employees, right? That's the real core of this book.
That's right. Yeah.
So what are your hopes for this book as it gets out there, as people read it? What are your hopes? What are you hoping this book will do?
Well, I hope that it's going to really give people the whole philosophy of leading that's simple yet powerful, and that we've broken the pieces up, and they can take a look and chew one at it all, not throw the whole thing at them, but it'd be a way to have a constant dialogue with you and your people about leadership and about how you can work together, and also we're just excited about it. We just think it's going to be a great team building book, not one that you're going to read by yourself and say, now I have all these goodies, because it's going to be 2 or 3 secrets are going to, simple truths that are going to say, idiot.
Yeah, we really believe that the world is in desperate need of a new leadership model and a different approach to leadership, and servant leadership is that answer. And everyone also deserves a leader that they can trust. I think in order for us to have healthy, vibrant, thriving organizations, whether that's corporations, sports teams, community groups, churches, whatever, families, we need to have high trust relationships. That's the foundation of any healthy and successful relationship. And if readers of this book can pick up a few of these simple truths that they've probably learned at some point in their life and have either forgotten or just neglected to apply, if they can pick these up and put them into practice, they're going to see positive results. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book, it's The Simple Truths of Leadership. And for those on YouTube, you can see it. I'm holding it up right there. So it comes out on February 1st. Is that correct?
That's right.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
It's available for pre-order if people listen or view this prior to February 1. But yep, it's available now.
So where can people go to get the book?
Well, you can go to Amazon. You can go to kenblanchard.com. You can go to you probably. We hope that it's going to be a giveaway book so that you can go to friends and relatives and say, how did I get that book?
Keeping it simple, a simple starting point is go to simpletruthsofleadership.com. That's our book website. Visit there, and from there you can launch to a number of different booksellers. You can see a video of Ken and myself sharing the premise of the book and why we wrote it and how you can use it, and get in contact with us if you would like to do that. But simpletruthsofleadership.com.
Oh, that's great. We'll put links in the show notes for that. And again, I highly recommend everyone who's listening in, you've got to get this book. It's Simple Truths of Leadership, 52 Ways to Be a Servant Leader and build trust. And I will say the other subtitle, because I love this, Making Common Sense Common Practice. And Ken and Randy, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all this. I am excited about this book, and I'm excited about what I think it's going to do for people going forward. So thank you.
Well, thank you, John. It's just been great to be with you. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's been great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Welcome, explorers of the human experience. This is Let's Talk Soul, and I'm your host, Claudia Monticelli. We're not afraid of the great mysteries of existence here. Soul versus consciousness, we're on it. Spirituality versus science, we've got that covered too. Join us in navigating these profound topics with wisdom, curiosity, and a dash of audacity. Whether you're a spiritual veteran or just starting your journey, Let's Talk Soul is your passport to the unknown. Let's Talk Soul, diving into the depths of the human spirit. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey there, fabulous souls. I'm Stephanie Baklaan.
And I'm Eden Alpert.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, Unapologetically Fab.
Get ready to join us on an amazing and real journey as we dive into life after 40 and own it.
We're all about changing the narrative, leaning into who you are, and living a life by your own design.
Join us as we embrace life unapologetically and redefine success.
This is Unapologetically Fab,
an Electric Cat production.
See you there.